Thank you very much for coming to Tokyo International Film Festival co-hosted event MPA Seminar. Let me introduce myself. I am Murakami. I'll be serving as your MP. I am Murakami. I am with MPA Japan. Now, first of all, on behalf of the host, Mr. Edward Neubrunner, the Senior Vice President of Motion Picture Asia Pacific, will give opening remarks. Ed, please.
Konnichiwa and good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a true honor to join all of you today. My name is Ed Neubrunner, and I'm from the Motion Picture Association Asia Pacific office. I'm truly privileged to welcome all of you. And once again, we are deeply gratified to partner with the US Embassy, the Federation of Japanese Films Industry, and UNIJAPAN. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Ando-san, Chairman of TIFF, Evan Felsing, Economic Minister Counselor, US Embassy, Nasuno-san, Secretary General of the Secretariat of Intellectual Property Strategy Headquarters in the Cabinet Office, Ito Sensei, former Minister for Environment, and Mitani-san, our good friend in the National Assembly, as well as all the esteemed guests gracing us with your presence this afternoon. Earlier this year, a seed was planted, a government strategy to cultivate, nurture, and ultimately amplify Japan's boundless creative talent on the global stage. And today, we are already witnessing the flourishing of that dream. Japanese films, television shows, games, and anime are fast-tracking what's known as the New Cool Japan strategy. In the past, at MPA seminars hosted during TIFF, we've explored the pathways to build a healthy, thriving, and sustainable film and TV industry in this country. We have watched the government embrace incentives that transform the landscape overnight, drawing the eyes and interests of international creators, eager to bring their visions to life on Japanese soil. Today, Japan's creative community is nothing short of extraordinary, producing content that has audiences across the world spellbound. Shogun swept the Emmys, rewriting the record books once dominated by Game of Thrones. Tokyo Vice soared to global acclaim, while Tokyo Swindlers captivated imaginations with its sharp and near-real narrative of real estate scammers in over their heads. And then there's anime, the lifeblood of modern storytelling and loved by devoted fans in the millions around the world. In 2023, the global anime market was valued at over $31 billion, and it's set to grow even further in the years ahead. Audiences have been glued to their screens, watching shows like One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Attack on Titan. And here in the homeland of anime, Gundam rules supreme. As a lover of these cinematic marvels, I am blissfully unaware of the sophisticated tools of the trade. That's the challenge for the directors, producers, post-production teams who bring magic to life on screen. But I do know this. The entertainment industry is bursting with visionaries who embrace the future. Innovators who use technology as the brush to paint their masterpieces. Today, the tools of our craft are evolving in lightning speed, and the question everyone is asking, how do we harness this responsibly and to everyone's advantage? These are the new frontiers. There are more tools, and they are the keys to unlock new dimensions of creativity, breathing life into our collective imaginations. We are fortunate to have here today a stellar cast of speakers, visionaries who will guide us through these uncharted waters of production, anime, post-production, and VFX. It is an exhilarating time for filmmakers, both here and around the world, a time for imaginations to soar to new heights. And for us, the audience, we are ready to be thrilled, to be mesmerized by the stories these artists will bring to life. I invite all of you to enjoy today's conversations and presentations. And once again, I thank you all for joining us on this remarkable journey. Arigato gozaimashita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newbrunner. Now, from the co-organizer, I would like to invite Mr. Hiroyasu Ando, Chairman of Tokyo International Film Festival, please. I am a chairman of a TIFF.
Mr. Newbrunner, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
For this time around, this is the 37th Tokyo International Film Festival, and today, just like this, inviting an MPA team, including AI and VFX and other latest technology, we are seeing the hosting of this seminar about a movie production, and this is extremely significant. This theme is very timely and important. And on our part, we are very much interested. Recently in Japan as well, including movies, the importance of a creative industry promotion is becoming ever more important, and this is strongly recognized and led by the government. There is a framework for consideration that's been launched. Against this backdrop, in the front line of movie production, working conditions have to be improved, and about funding for film festivals and so on, discussions have been taking place. On top of those, today's theme is AI, VFX, and so forth, and this is for the future of movies. To make various insights, these topics are also very, very important. Our film festival as well, the year before, had an opening, and this year, to deepen international exchange even more and to develop human resources for movie production as well as women's empowerment, we have these three key themes, and we'd like to make contributions to the development of movie and film industry. Thanks to your support, the day before yesterday, we had an opening, and the red carpet was very lively, and more than last year, the turnout was greater, and we were able to have a very good start. We, as a movie festival, would like to continue to collaborate with MPA, working with them even more closely, and on various themes, including today's themes, we would like to have a wide range of discussions, and towards the future of the film industry, we'd like to make steady progress. Thank you very much. That's all for my brief opening remark as part of the organizers for the film festival. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ando. Next, I would like to invite a speaker from the U.S. Embassy in Japan, which is sponsoring this seminar, Mr. Evan Felsing, Economic Minister Counselor.
Good afternoon, esteemed guests, colleagues, and friends. It is truly an honor to be here with you today at this important gathering, and I extend my heartfelt thanks to the Motion Picture Association and UNIJAPAN for organizing this seminar. The entertainment industry is not only a cornerstone of cultural exchange, but also a driver of innovation, creativity, and economic growth, both in the United States and here in Japan. Today, I want to highlight three critical areas where our cooperation and leadership are crucial: AI governance, intellectual property protection, and the fight against disinformation. First, as artificial intelligence reshapes the landscape of the film and entertainment industry, it is vital that we promote responsible AI governance. The United States is committed to advancing AI in ways that uphold democratic values, protect human rights, and foster innovation. Whether it is using AI to enhance production techniques or revolutionize content distribution, we must work together to ensure transparency, accountability, and fairness in the use of this powerful technology. We support efforts to create international frameworks that promote responsible AI development and use, balancing innovation with the protection of fundamental rights. Second, the United States remains steadfast in its commitment to the protection of intellectual property, a principle that underpins the success of the entertainment industry globally. In an age where digital content moves across borders with the click of a button, we must ensure that creators are rewarded for their work. Strong IP protection fosters creativity, fuels economic growth, and ensures that films, music, and other artistic endeavors continue to thrive. The United States and Japan have long been partners in promoting robust intellectual property laws, and together we can continue to combat piracy, safeguard innovation, and protect the livelihood of creators. And then finally, in this increasingly interconnected digital age, we must face the pervasive challenge of disinformation. False narratives not only undermine public trust, but also distort the shared cultural and social understandings that film and media are built upon. Both the United States and Japan recognize the critical importance of combating disinformation while upholding the values of free speech. By promoting media literacy, encouraging transparent communication, and collaborating with tech companies, governments, and civil society, we can work together to counter these harmful trends and protect the integrity of our shared information space. In closing, I am confident the discussions and insights shared at the seminar will strengthen our collective efforts in these three vital areas. The United States remains committed to working with Japan and the broader international community to support AI governance, to protect intellectual property, and fight disinformation, ensuring a vibrant and secure future for the entertainment industry and beyond. Now, the remarks that I just gave you are a product of generative AI. In delivering these remarks, I wanted to concretely illustrate the intuitive power of this technology, showing how it has great potential to drive positive innovation under proper governing guidelines. Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimashita.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Councillor Felsim. Finally, I'd like to invite Mr. Futoshi Nasuno, Secretary General, Secretariat of Intellectual Property Strategy Headquarters at the Cabinet Office, to deliver an opening address, who is really the control tower of Japan's IP policy. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to the MPA seminar today. I am from Secretariat of Intellectual Property Strategy Headquarters at the Cabinet Office. My name is Nasuno. Also, my thanks go to the Motion Picture Association team for your tremendous cooperation for intellectual property policy of Japan on a daily basis. Today, to develop a movie production environment in Japan and to deliver Japan's film contents on an international basis coveted by the rest of the world, I would like to talk about challenges and expectations about 3 points, including location, attraction, private sector initiatives, as well as generative AI. First and foremost, attracting locations. When it comes to movies and broadcast programs and other film works, there are various elements such as original manga creation, novels, music, and art. So it is really a comprehensive art. And for viewers, it plays an important role as a soft power which deepens sympathies towards Japan's history, culture, as well as society. It is really playing an outsized role. So by using Japan, overseas projects take place with Japanese locations, and this will create an opportunity for Japan's businesses and staff members to participate in film production at a global level, and it can refine production methods and production control and develop human resources. It is quite impactful. So at the Cabinet Office to implement smoothly. location filming. In August 2020, we established and formulated a location film guideline for 3 parties, namely film commissions, rights holders such as local governments, as well as movie producers, and based upon the implementation status to improve the environment even further. In the near future, we will revise this guideline. To be more specific, we will clarify the contact point about locations for filming and feature case studies for shooting to increase the predictability. About licensing and so on, these will be newly added elements. Also in October last year, METI started providing incentives, maximum 1 billion yen per project for overseas movie production companies for their location filming in Japan for their production expenses, and so far 10 projects have been selected. The breakdown would be that the US, France, South Korea, and India, these are production countries, and they are creating movies and streamed drama series and so on. We try to operate the system effectively and spread the system and raise awareness. Also including VFX investment in studio development, it can make editing process after shooting more efficient and boost the environment for movie production. Japan's traditional culture, world-leading technology, and manga anime can be accessed by creators more easily, and we can boost international competitiveness of those pieces. Going forward, including the MPA team, I hope that there will be more active investment in Japan's studios. I have such strong hopes. The second point is initiatives in the private sector. We should promote domestic production of movie works, and not only the government's incentives are important, but also improving a trading and labor environment of a movie production frontline, reviewing production method that is unique to Japan, and developing human resources are important, which are undertaken by the private sector, especially when it comes to the improvement of labor environment. The movie community set up Japanese movie production optimization organization, which was a voluntary organization. And in April last year, it started operating the trading guideline for the development on a sustainable basis for movie production. The operation of this guideline started. So this guideline still carries some issues compared with general standards under the labor standard law, so that movie industry will become an attractive industry. To improve the trading and labor environment, we have to strengthen our efforts even more. Also, in case of Japan's anime and movie creation, we tend to have a production commission or committee method, and investing companies tend to set up a high fee. So because of that, creators are not rewarded sufficiently. Because of the low profit margin, it is not an attractive investment destination for external investors. We have been focusing or relying on the motivation of our creators or sense of fulfillment. We should break away with such a business model, just targeting a domestic market. We should also consider overseas rollout, as well as spread IP or expand IP strategy, and establishing content production that is sustainable is imminent challenge. And the third point is generative AI. Together with the expectation about improving productivity, there are some concerns about violation risks of copyrights and so on. So recently, Cultural Agency sorted out its thinking about AI and copyrights, and a Cabinet Office sorted out thinking about generative AI and IP, and reports have been issued. The report by the Cabinet Office says that generative AI and intellectual property rights are not hostile to each other. By having good collaboration amongst the laws, technologies, and contracts, we should create an ecosystem which can balance AI technology progress and appropriate protection of IP rights. In the private sector recently, now generative AI is learning the practitioners or performers voices and so on, but we are trying to promote healthy business promotion to respect the performers' intentions. And we have studied a system to monitor the usage status of registered voices through the the issuance of labels and so on. Content creators can provide their works to AI developers for a fee, and they can be rewarded for the data provision. Also, AI developers and so on can use paid data for the development of generative AI, and they can provide even more sophisticated generative AI, which can lead to new creation activities, and we are hoping to see such a positive spiral of creative activities. Today, I talked about challenges and expectations about 3 points, namely location attraction, private sector initiatives, and generative AI. We'd like to implement these efforts through public-private partnership in a comprehensive way, and in so doing, we'd like to develop an environment for movie production in Japan, and we hope that we can deliver Japanese contents which will be loved by the rest of the world. I hope that today's seminar will be useful not only for Japan, but also for the content industry on a global basis. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nasuno. I am very grateful for your remarks. At this point in time, I would like to invite Mr. Shintaro Ito, former member of the House of Representatives and former Minister of the Environment and the CEO of Intermedia. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the kind introduction. I am Ito Shintaro. This is the 14th MPA Seminar. Congratulations for this occasion. Every year I participate in this seminar, and the filmmaking and MPA Seminar as well are making evolution and progress every year. The theme of this year's seminar is related to AI, VFX, and the technology and the art and culture are like two wheels of a cart. Technology, if you cannot use it right, the one of the wheels will not be working and the car will collapse. Therefore, including legal development, we have to ensure that tools will be used in the right way so that it can make a contribution to the development of filmmaking industry. The international was mentioned as a word. Maybe we should say global rather than international, because we are living in an online internet age, and the country-by-country based distribution approach is not very good. We have to consider filmmaking from the global perspective. I think that is a challenge we are facing. Japan has a difficulty with locations and location scouting and so forth, and also working practice is very different from other countries. So we have many challenges that we have to overcome to be on par with other countries globally, so that producers will be able to make good films in Japan and to be enjoyed by the global audience. And that will contribute to the development of filmmaking industry, but also it will make the peacemaking in the world, where we see growing division recently. And also, we are hoping that environment will be also improved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ito. Now, I would like to read a message on behalf of Mr. Hidehiro Mitani, member of the House of Representatives, a former parliamentary vice minister of education, culture, sports, science, and technology, who has been instrumental in promoting intellectual property rights and content industry. But I'd like to congratulate on the holding of Tokyo International Festival, the 14th MPA Seminar. This year, you are featuring a theme, latest trends of overseas production. To develop a content industry, it is important to establish economic significance. In that sense, this seminar, since last year, location scouting policy has been one of the agenda items, and I hope that this year there will be even wider range of discussions taking place. Also, in so doing, including movies in various content industries, I hope that this will contribute to the creation of environment which can produce quality works. I would like to pay respect to all the stakeholders towards hosting this seminar, and I would like to wish you very good health. The 30th of October 2024, member of Lower House, Mitani Hidehiro. Thank you very much.
Now, the first keynote speaker is Mr. Alex Bowden, who is the producer of Tokyo Vice. Mr. Bowden, please.
Konnichiwa.
Good afternoon. Distinguished delegates of the government of Japan, U.S. Embassy in Japan, and the ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to
Thank
be
you so
here
much
with you.
to the MPA for the generous invitation, and thank you to Warner Brothers Discovery and HBO Max, as well as our US studio fifth season and Japanese co-producer partner WowWow, for the very special collaboration that led me to leave my home to spend almost 2 years on an island, Japan, producing both seasons of the TV series Tokyo Vice. I'm not a Hollywood producer. I'm actually an international producer from another island, the UK. I work with the US studios all the time, and I speak English, French, and German, but not yet Japanese. And over my career, I've worked a lot on bringing international production to the UK, including as chairman of the Production Guild of Great Britain. In the UK, just like in Japan, we aim to make the UK industry a more welcoming place for US studio and other productions to come to film, to work with our cast and crew, our locations and studios. As an industry, we constantly address key issues, such as training enough crew, advising on filming incentives, as well as soundstage availability. These are issues that are also very relevant for Japan right now. What an exciting time it is to be looking at international production in Japan. The JLOC's Japan Location Incentive has been launched, and global interest in Japanese stories is at a high, as you've heard already today. Local and international productions are winning the highest awards around the world. While Tokyo Vice was being made, the world has been thrilled by Academy Award winners from Japan, including Hamaguchi's Drive My Car, Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron, Koji Yakusho for Perfect Days, and Toho's Godzilla -1. And director Koreeda, of course, his films Monsters and Shoplifters won top prizes at Cannes Film Festival. With these local successes, plus the record-breaking 18 Emmy Awards for FX series Shogun that Ed mentioned earlier, there is rightly huge excitement about the future of the Japanese industry. There's a huge opportunity to shine on the global stage. So to start with, I'm going to talk to you about how we found the right solutions on the icebreaker of a series, Tokyo Vice, which was the first series from a US studio streamer to film entirely on location in Japan. That's right, all 8 episodes of season 1, and actually almost all of the 10 episodes of season 2. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the series yet, it's set in late 1990s Japan, and based on journalist Jake Adelstein's first-hand account of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police beat. Created by Tony Award-winning American playwright and showrunner J.T. Rogers, it captures Adelstein's daily descent into the neon-soaked underbelly of Tokyo, where nothing and no one is truly what or who they seem. The talented cast includes Ken Watanabe, Ansel Elgort, Rachel Keller, Sho Kazumatsu, as well as Rinko Kikuchi, the official festival navigator of this year's Tokyo International Film Festival. For an introduction to the series, here's the WowWow promotional trailer for the Japanese launch of Season 2 from April this year.
So, what exactly do you do all day?
I chase down stories.
What do you love most about your job?
I'd say the unpredictability of it. Never knowing what's coming next.
Jack, you did not come to Tokyo in pursuit of one man. There are other stories, other crimes to be exposed. That is your job.
If you saw anything that can help me, now's my chance.
I saw a tattoo.
You know I'm on something.
Chase it. Tell no one.
警察に潰されるか 自分たちが変わる。答えは一つ。
Watch yourself. Don't be stupid.
Don't be stupid. I'll have to remember that.
我慢の限界だ。やっちまえ。佐藤、お前をこんな目に遭わしたやつ、生かしておかねえからな。もう十分です。Who knows what he'll do if Tozawa thinks we have this information?
Maybe you should lay low. Today, a man told me he'd kill me if I don't stop writing.
I think you gotta keep going. Be careful. Other people are relying on you now. You are the way this ends. 何事にも代償がつきもんですから。
その代償に見合うものにしないと。
我々は犯罪集団じゃない。この国の未来だ。
So, I worked with Japan in the late 1990s, actually, producing 2 short film projects in Japanese, as well as a music video for the Japanese singer Zard. So I had some early knowledge of the challenges of international productions with Japan: cost, crew, permits. So when I joined Tokyo Vice in 2020, it was with excitement, but also some insight. Before flying to Japan, I spoke to producers and directors around the world who had worked on Japan set projects recently. How long did they film? What was their experience? Well, this exercise didn't take long. There was hardly anyone who'd filmed in Japan recently. The same challenges still existed for international producers in Japan. Many who I spoke to had visited, maybe scouted, and been enchanted by the potential, but had given up on the idea of Japan. They advised against it for filming a whole series. No incentive, no studios. Find somewhere easier to shoot. Most other cities are much more film-friendly. They'd gone to other countries like New Zealand for The Last Samurai, German for Speed Racer, Taiwan for Silence, anywhere else but Japan. And the trend of productions going overseas has continued recently with Toronto and Vancouver for Pachinko and Shogun. Some productions did manage to film in Japan for a few days or weeks, and then with budget spent, they moved on to countries with more welcoming production landscapes, and importantly for all productions, both independent and US studio, a reliable tax incentive. Filming in Japan was clearly a special experience to be treated with extreme caution. Only if you really have to, was the clear message. Knowing that we were about to film a whole season in Japan, we definitely had to. So, under the most extreme circumstances, here's some insight into what we had to deal with. The world was in the middle of the pandemic in summer 2020, with the US unions requiring the strictest protocols to keep productions working. The borders closed a few weeks after I arrived, and in line with international travel restrictions, some of our international crew were never able to enter Japan. So, with 4 directors, each shooting different episodes, the crew would be over 3 times bigger than on a local film. And there are not many freelance crew available in Japan. The freelance industry is challenging in every country, and film and TV are not the most popular profession for school leavers here. Most of our cast and crew are not bilingual either. Our local line producer, Hammer, and his team in the room today, had experience of working on the Japan sections of some large international projects, which was really valuable. But few of our crew had experience with longer projects, working generally on smaller shoots and commercials, and we had a whole series to make. Challenges were mounting, especially for an ambitious show like Tokyo Vice. Our multiple storylines require many locations. We average not far off a location each day of filming. And while we have location companies and one-stop shop agencies in most other countries who can help us to secure a school or an office or a private residence location in the area where we need it, in Japan we were glad with the locations that we could secure, which were often very far apart from each other, requiring extra travel time. And with a 1990s story, we need period-correct 90s architecture in a city that seems to be forever being rebuilt. Translating documents across production is a daily event. Google Translate and DeepL were essential tools for this production, but script translation is a huge undertaking of its own. First from English into Japanese, which takes great expertise, and then polishing the dialogues until they're 100% perfect for all the characters. From a 90s police detective or to a Yakuza underling, they have to be perfect. And then coordinating any edits and changes. And with a mostly Japanese-speaking cast and crew, this can't happen quickly enough. So several things on a Japanese production run differently from on an international crew. To give you some examples, well, locations are a big reason why we're here. The city of Tokyo is like a character in the series. And by filming on location, from Saitama to Chiba and Yokohama, we create an immersive experience for the audience that would be very difficult to recreate anywhere else in the world. Uniquely in Japan, each location has its own location manager to look after the location owner from start to finish, out of respect to the owner. Sending a substitute doesn't really work, and this involves more crew, as you can imagine. We had many locations in the center of the city, Shibuya, Akasaka, Shinjuku, Kabukicho, where we film in and around real host and hostess clubs, with crowds everywhere. Nothing about this is easy. And the locations issue is compounded by there being so little space available in Tokyo. Western industry trailers and facilities trucks are out of the question. The industry here doesn't use them or have space to park them. Smaller trucks are needed for the narrow streets, and it takes plenty of these to compensate. We'd secured a good production office at the legendary Toho Studios in the west of the city in Setagaya, an excellent base for the production. But securing actual stages for filming was a separate project and is a big challenge in Tokyo generally. There are few sound stages available for hire by outside companies, and no available warehouses that can be converted for filming either. We felt this acutely when we lost one of our main locations, the Tokyo Police Department, and needed to house it in a studio. Our approach has always been to be respectful of how things work in Japan. Things have been done the same way here for many years, and we elected to work the Japanese way from the start, and this was absolutely the right decision. We also learned the value of creating a plan and sticking to it 100% with no last-minute changes. We had to be extra strategic. Together with the whole crew, we gathered and shared a presentation of how a US TV series production runs. The prep and shoot model, where we shoot at the same time as preparing for future episodes with different directors, and cross-boarding, filming multiple episodes together in blocks, and often with different directors shooting on the same day, due to US Directors Guild regulations requiring one director to be fully responsible for directing all scenes of their own episode. We switched to a Sunday to Thursday shooting week to get better access to certain locations. We could only film on Sundays, like parks, or where we needed to stop traffic. And as a rule, since our activity should not disrupt the daily life of citizens, permits for this kind of activity can be hard to come by. Our production and locations teams did an exceptional job to arrange the access that they did. We also hired a range of different consultants to ensure that the world of the series are authentically Japanese and period-correct 1990s, from newspapers to the police and to the mizo shobai, nightlife entertainment world. We contacted and gained support from Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike. Having Tokyo Vice featured in the news helped people to know who we are, from location owners to the Tokyo Police themselves. And we also met local ministers who understood the value for the economy and for tourism that productions like this can bring to the country. Visa applications are required for international crew living and working in Japan long-term and are often difficult to arrange. So our thanks for their support to Minister Yamashita and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Justice for their much appreciated engagement to allow our actors and crew to enter the country in time for filming. The shoot, well, one of my mantras on production is, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We had 110 days of filming at 5 days a week. It's much longer than many local productions. The work is demanding every day, but you still have to pace yourself as you go. And the shoot in Japan challenged us all, so kudos to everyone involved who pulled it off, including the team members with us in the room today. Otsukaresama deshita. thank you so much for all your hard work, which is the greeting that choruses around the set when we wrap at the end of the day. Speaking also on behalf of JT Rogers and Alan Poole and all of the producers, we would be glad to work with you again, anytime. We encourage the Seisakubu crew to specialize in separate departments rather than sharing duties across production locations, which is normal here. Traditional working customs, such as staying at work with the boss until they go home, while it might work on a small film, wouldn't help us here with our workload. We supported the crew with delegating roles, so they'd be on set with the director, while others would be at the next locations, preparing for scenes to follow in later episodes. And the cast were exemplary to work with. I loved how prepared they were every day, and how focused everyone would be, especially when lead actor and executive producer Ken Watanabe was on set. And yes, it did require more solutions to be found than I've experienced on any other production before. Even more than the Netflix series Sense8, where we filmed all over the world, from Iceland to India and South Korea. The curious thing is that even with the experience of filming in different countries, a lot of the issues that you deal with on a production in Japan are very unique to Japan. And you still have to deliver the very best quality of show in spite of all the challenges. Knowing how much simpler it is to film abroad, you do sometimes, after a long day on set, wonder, is it really worth it? But we felt optimistic. And the dailies, the footage that we shoot each day, looked promising. Our 1990s Tokyo was so cinematic. And we were securing some really exciting locations. We filmed at a shrine, on a yacht, with a plane at the airport, and our way of working together was improving every day. Season 1 performed well. The 90s and Tokyo, this rarely seen location, seemed to be the coolest combination out there. Our lead characters and their stories landed strongly with audiences around the world. And the show received positive reviews and won fans all over the world. As Season 2 was greenlit. When we came back for Season 2 in 2022, our ambitions had, of course, grown. With the lifting of some of the coronavirus restrictions in Japan, we wanted to expand the scale of the show. We started location scouting even earlier. This is something I highly recommend. And several of our freelance crew from Season 1 weren't available, including key positions, so new crew had to be brought in and trained up. We added new cast, including Miki Maya and Yosuke Kobozuka. And we added a location outside Tokyo. We would be filming in the snowy mountains of Nagano, site of the 1998 Winter Olympic Games. To help us with scope, we established a more nimble second unit, usually working independently of the main unit. And we employed new technology. We sourced new action vehicles for filming car and traveling shots, and we also worked regularly with a team operating a remote head crane. And we took advantage of a new virtual production LED volume stage for some of our driving scenes, and it proved how efficient this technology can be. We were now able to travel much more freely and to have bigger crowds of background extras in our scenes. Many highlights, too many to mention, but some include the filming of an assassination scene with 100 period vehicles on a 4-lane road outside the town hall office, and filming at Akasaka Esplanade in central Tokyo, which we were able to take over for a major scene at the exterior of Club Polina one evening. No Japanese TV production has ever been granted police permission to film like this in Akasaka before. Huge praise to our locations team for making this happen. The shoot went well, and it felt very special indeed. And being able to film outside the US Embassy, for which we thank Ambassador Emmanuel Ram and the supportive embassy staff, and the local police as well, was a highlight. Some of these came about thanks to the relationships we'd developed. It felt as though we'd gained trust by showing that we were responsible, by sticking to the laws and not causing any offense. This made a huge difference. And we were filming these scenes on the actual streets of Tokyo, not on a sound stage or in another city like Los Angeles or Vancouver. These were days that felt like triumphs when we completed them. Triumphs, but I should mention that these big wins would be seen as fairly standard in other countries. Street closures, filming on public transport, for example, or in offices and at private homes, are not usually difficult to arrange, especially with the agencies that streamline the process and make it efficient. 4 years later, and all 18 episodes of Tokyo Vice are streaming worldwide. On Max in the US, and many other countries on WoW On Demand here in Japan, and on other platforms, including the UK's BBC and Australia's SBS, the very best homes for the show. Well, how did we pull it off? I've been told by colleagues that we made it look too easy. Well, the honest answer is that it was problem solving every day, and being flexible, as well as quick to respond. We trusted and empowered our local producers and crew in equal measure. The whole crew was ready to learn from each other and never gave up supporting our showrunner, JT Rogers, executive producer and director, Alan Poole, our writers and directors, and our team of Japanese producers, including Sachi Watanabe and Ken Tajima here, to achieve this demanding series. Some things, though, were just not possible or remain challenging. Some examples. Filming on the Tokyo subway. We didn't quite manage that one yet. Financial accounting is a much slower, more manual process in Japan. So we had to pull back and make concessions to cost reporting less frequently on a bi-weekly basis. Location permits, when we received them, were curiously sometimes issued for up to 30 crew maximum. This has clearly been a precedent here in Tokyo for many decades, and I hope that a better understanding of how productions operate and the scale of the crew that we have will allow this to be updated. So now, what happens next in Japan? Well, there's absolutely no doubt. The JLOC's Japan Location Incentive Program is a game changer. Japan has been the only G7 country that didn't have an incentive yet. Tokyo Vice has been very glad to receive a grant from the Location Incentive Pilot Project for International Audiovisual Productions of the Cabinet Office of the Government of Japan, based on our production spend in Japan on both seasons of the show. It allowed our production spend in Japan to go further. And this was after we applied and later shared information about our production, including our scripts, filming schedules, locations, budgets, numbers of cast and crew, and more, to show what a production of our size requires when filming in Japan. We were glad to share this information. So the now newly launched incentive is such an exciting step forwards for Japan. Interest is high, and I'm being asked for information on filming in Japan from a new project almost every week at the moment. I got a call this morning. The benefits of an incentive are clear. They bring business to the country, which positively impacts on the growth of the creative industries, but also on the economy in general, and on tourism. So, I very much hope that the program can be continued long into the future, and that the success of the incentive can be built on to win the trust of producers and studios around the world. With more international productions chasing the incentive, it follows that local producers and crew, suppliers, and film commissions will all become more skilled at how international high-end series and films are made. It's also best practice to be consistently reviewing the incentive, especially in its early stages. So how producer-friendly is the program? How well is it working at attracting all kinds of productions, US studio as well as independent productions, TV as well as film? And does it allow producers to bring increasingly ambitious projects to Japan? The reality today is that producers have many options of places to film in the world, and in a competitive market, there are always very attractive incentives elsewhere. Incentive-backed productions can also be required to invest in training and traineeships for new entrants. The benefit of longer international jobs is that you can train someone in pre-production and they can make a big contribution to the film or TV series within months. Upskilling of local crew in key positions that are in short supply is also a priority, especially line producers and production staff, but we were also in short supply of some art department positions, and bilingual accountants and script supervisors are rare. Shadowing or mentor programs attached to real productions can make a huge difference. They're a great opportunity for new directors and producers, but also other below-the-line crew to learn on the job from international professionals. I can't recommend this highly enough, having benefited myself. And so with a view to building on and sharing the knowledge as the industry opens up, together with Film Solutions, Junko Kuzunoki and other experts here, we are developing a partnership to connect Japanese industry professionals who have international experience. The goal is to improve best practices and to encourage sustainable business, with workshops and other opportunities focused on international standards and on new ways of financing and producing film and TV in Japan. Other areas include consulting on improvements of infrastructure and studios, using international industry software with digital workflow, for example, for budgeting, scheduling, and accounting efficiency, financing and legal training, including for contracts, copyright, and US studio reporting. Well, hopefully we can also prepare the ground for a one-stop shop system that will make the location and street permitting process simpler. There's so much that can be done to welcome incoming productions, and at the highest level, this could extend to looking after other areas, arranging visas as well as connecting local business with the industry, bringing business to hotels, travel, and transport companies, which are all key to ensuring that a production runs smoothly. The potential is vast. And remember that Japan can look to and should learn from the many other countries that have recently opened up to the specific demands of large-scale international production. Together, we all learned a huge amount from our collaboration on this series, and we're all in this process together. So looking at the future, I want to finish by saying that this opening up of an industry is a window of opportunity. It won't be Japan's turn forever, but it is right now. The process succeeds best with direction, ambition, and strategic investment. And it creates jobs, supports the export of local creativity, and ensures that local stories are seen and heard, as we've discussed earlier today. The global success stories include the countries who back their industry with investment where it's needed most. Beyond production, it's also an opportunity to examine and improve the international success of how local productions are marketed and sold, as well as distributed, and how Japan's content industry as a whole is promoted. Local, as well as international investment in Japanese productions will usually follow. Excitingly, we're seeing signs that Japanese media finance, which used to be very active, is looking to return to investment in production. So I'm glad to report that training is already underway to provide advice to international producers on how best to film in Japan from various organizations, including Japan Film Commission. We'll be in London together in December to present the latest insights. And investing in local productions can lead to bigger and more successful productions. And as we've seen on Tokyo Vice, with the engagement of Japanese producer Wow Wow, Kayo Washio is here today, the partnership with Fifth Season and Max early on means that all partners have the benefits of engaging early and are able to market to their subscribers even more successfully. It really does feel as though Tokyo Vice has indeed been the icebreaker. I'm incredibly excited for the future of film production globally, but especially in Japan. The landscape today is already vastly different from 4 years ago. How exciting to see the world industry wanting to work with Japanese talent and locations. As we heard earlier, local producers, actors, and crew are all gaining experience on a variety of different projects that will hopefully travel around the world. And productions already backed by the JLOC's location incentive include a Bollywood film shoot at Sapporo Snow Festival, The Rock and Emily Blunt in town, US actor Brendan Fraser, all coming to Japan to film. And the story is out that Titanic director James Cameron has a project called The Last Train from Hiroshima. Well, these are exciting times. And Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced in a filmed message at the festival opening ceremony on Monday night that the Japanese content industry has an export scale comparable to that of the steel and semiconductor industries. And he committed to further developing the growth of the content industry creatively and strategically. This is an official acknowledgement of the real economic value of this industry. It deserves united support across industry, and ministers are clearly ready to engage. The world is watching to see what happens next. It's been a personal pleasure and an honor living and working in Japan, and I'm really excited, as you can see, about the potential of the future. I learned so much from being here, and I know that all my colleagues, cast, and crew members on Tokyo Vice did as well. Let's continue to listen and learn from each other and move forward to a new golden age of film and TV production in Japan. I, for one, will be supporting the future of Japan's industry from wherever I'll be, and I'm sure that I'll also be in Japan in person for filming again before long. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you especially to the talented cast and crew from Japan who made Tokyo Vice the success that it has become. Go seichou, arigatou gozaimashita.
Well, thank you very much. Next, we would like to invite Mr. Nakajima Ryo, film director and CEO of Super Tube LLC, to deliver a lecture. Good afternoon to you all. This is Nakajima Ryo speaking. So Alex's lecture was amazing with many proposals, and I, for one, I completely agree with him. Tokyo requires a lot of patience when shooting, and towards the future, what sort of activities would be necessary? There were so many proposals and recommendations, and I was most impressed with his talk. So in my speech, I would like to talk about humans and AI co-creation era, the evolution of real time, and so on. So this is Nakajima Ryo. Thank you very much. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. In my case, I have been a director of a live-action movie for 15 years, and so far I have filmed 8 long films. In 2020, during COVID-19 pandemic, I started learning computer graphics, and in 2022, motion capture studio was open. And I've done some game works and also special effects, hero programs, related CG works. In 2023, I created a piece called Who Said This Is Beautiful with my own funding, and I was a director of this work myself. So ahead of the rest of the world, I started introducing generative AI. So this was submitted to France, Annecy International Animation, and the ROK, Republic of Korea's International Fantastic Film Festival, and this was selected as official selection. And for this year, I have been experimenting the possibility of utilizing image creation AI. To be more specific, using AI through 3D, improving details. I will explain this later on. And also rotoscoping for live action to a picture-like images, and also live action to anime type rotoscoping. And also in the area of VFX, utilization of AI is another area where I've been experimenting, and that is what I'd like to discuss with you today. So together with such case studies and use cases, I'd like to share with you my experiences around AI. So first, Who Said This Is Beautiful? That is the work or piece that I want to mention. So I'd like to share with you the commercial. And so there is this boy who became a zombie, and then there is a woman, a doctor, who is treating him. And this is a short journey, and this really depicts the struggles of people in their lives. This is a horror movie. In 2020, I wrote the script in 2020, and this is a sort of exploratory work to my intrinsic life with my philosophy on life. And 5 members were in the team, and we spent 8 months producing this. So we used the motion capture for this piece without preparing a storyboard, without improvisation of actors, and so on. And also there are some scenes which were not included in the script. We decided to add some shoots, and then we worked quite flexibly. And also we used an iPad as a VR camera. So camera angle was decided based upon such a tool and approach. An iPad I carried lights and so on, so we did some VR lighting. In this way, just like a live action production, I filmed animation. Now on AI use, the finishing touch was where I used AI. As you can see the images to improve the details of a character. I decided to use AI, so you can see the comparison here. It may be a bit difficult to see, but comparing original and Stable Diffusion produced version, Stable Diffusion being generative AI, you can see on the right hand side the skin, eyes, and also shades, the texture was improved. So such shades and so on were the areas where quality could be improved through AI use. And with a 3D expression, this kind of a texture improvement could be quite difficult and challenging. This is a sophisticated work taking a lot of time, and we decided to use AI to this end. In 2023, AI was just emerging, and sometimes images were breaking down and so on. So we couldn't really change the images dramatically. So we decided to use the AI for detail up, if you like. So in the end, we had to do a lot of manual correction. So it was quite tough. So this work was introduced, and then from the very beginning, it was drawing attention because we used AI. At the same time, there was a lot of backlash against the use of AI. So currently, across the globe, there is a backlash against AI because AI may deprive people of work and jobs, and making AI learn could be a cultural appropriation. It may be taking away cultural assets of a given country. So some people are quite critical of the use of AI. So from this point on, I would like to talk about the difference in responses and reactions by different countries across the globe. So first, let's talk about the Annecy Film Festival in France. So this was quite controversial because in Europe, traditionally, they appreciate the craftsmanship. They have such a value grounded. So there are quite a few people critical of AI in the first place. So some AI-related works were selected, but 100% AI music video was one of them. And when this music video was screened, there was booing. So I was actually quite worried that my work would invite the same reaction. But after my work was screened, there was a natural applause. So there were quite a few young people in the audience, and what curator told me was that this work was not really made by AI. This used the motion capture and so on, and through human performance, this piece was created, and that was delivered to the audience. The audience could understand that. But currently within the EU bloc, there is rights negotiations taking place about streaming of this, but we are struggling because there is a strong backlash against work that had an AI input. Now, ROK, Republic of Korea, they tend to promote technology. They have such a psyche, and as you can see on the right-hand side, this says work plus AI, so they BFAM plus AI, so they utilize AI to a great deal. The government promotes it. In a film festival, there is an AI workshop participated by creators over the course of several days, and this was very, very interesting. So when it comes to screening a piece, the judges said that this horror movie was highly artistic, and I was very happy to hear such feedback. So because of the cultural backgrounds of different countries, the thinking about generative AI could also vary. So going forward, I believe that the regulations about AI will kick in more specifically. The other day, there was a bill that was passed by the EU to regulate AI. So this sets out obligations as well as penalties about the use of AI. If these rules become deeply rooted, I believe the backlash against AI will subside. Now let's talk about Japan. In case of Japan, the market size of content industry is growing every year, and human resources and talent who can play an important role are declining. If we introduce AI, we can cover such labor shortage, and also we can reduce long working hours, and safety may be improved during filming. In my view, this time around in the area of a 3D CG VFX area, if AI is utilized and promoted, perhaps the positive aspects of AI could be promoted. So I prepared an example. This is the concept art, and on the left-hand side, at the top, there is a demon robot, and then down below, there is a boy who's commanding this robot. So both of them have swords, and in ruins, they are fighting a zombie. So that's the sort of piece that I wanted to create. First and foremost, this demon robot had to be created, and a 3D model was necessary. So we decided to use AI to this end. So I asked the illustrator to prepare an illustration of the face of the robot as well as the entire body, and AI was used to make a 3D model out of this. So this one is running now, and it took about 2 hours until we reached this stage. So it was very speedy, in fact. And then after that, on the right-hand side, this is a close-up of that AI image. So if you do a close-up, all the details are sort of messy, so the quality is quite low. But then using a stable AI, stable diffusion after this, we detailed up the image that's on the left-hand side. So this one is a demon plus a robot, two models. We decided to use 50% demon and 50% robot, and then this is what we ended up with. So to create a video out of it, there is a technology. This is AI that can move static images, and we decided to create animation using that. So this robot is now opening its mouth very widely. So prompt was a roar, making noise, roar. So the animation was created with the robot opening its mouth very wide. Normally, you have to create a 3D model first and then create an animation out of it, and it takes a month. To create various 3D models, you have to have ample staff members. But this was complete within 2 to 3 days, and that was very impressive. Having said that, this kind of a technology is not almighty, 100% perfect, because this is a limited angles, and also this is a close-up, so it's working only because of that. Now, please have a look at this. So this is a guy peeping into something, live action, and I wanted to create ruins as a background, and using AR at the very beginning, 3D model was introduced to the live action setting. So the red part is AR. If you use a smartphone, AR is augmented reality, and virtual 3D model can be set up in a real physical space. And then we did some layouting work for the shoot, and then we decided to use a video AI function, and the result or upshot looks like this. So AI was used here, and we were able to create this kind of output. So using AI, the red area, we decided to put some rubbles there, and generative AI was able to pick up the features, and it could improve the details. And now the face of the human, we cannot use the same person, the face, so we decided to replace this one with the original actor. So the result looked like this. So to create this kind of footage, normally you have to set up a location for ruins, and you have to use a green background, and then do all the shooting with the actor, and then the rest has to be created with a 3D CG. So that is quite a piece of our work. But using AR and AI, it was very easy for us to create this following just the senses. It was very instinctive. We didn't have to spend too much time. So these are two approaches: creating movies through static images, and then converting movies to improve details. So we used these two approaches. Please have a look at the footage. Well, thank you very much for watching the video. So the production period was about 3 weeks. Only one staff member pretty much was involved, and then sometimes came in, and also the actor sometimes helped. So we did a research taking about a week, and we were able to learn what sort of expressions could be made by AI, and then we did a production spending 2 weeks or so. Through this process, we were able to identify some challenges about AI. For example, AI cannot understand the intention of the director about a production. To be more specific, for example, about the acting of an actor, for example, there is a demon robot raising its arm or making a roll. It is difficult to create good productions of movies, so you can tell an actor, for example, this is a defensive scene, so please raise your left arm and then have a clinch. But if you input that sort of a prompt, then the image would break down. So the prompt was a dance, actually. Very simple. And then the robot started moving in a way that was sort of similar to what I had intended. So AI had learned things in the past, and out of those materials, they used labeled information and then create an output. And so that is the only way to go about it when you want to produce something through AI. So you have to click on the generate button again and again, and out of various movies or footage, if there is something that you like, you decide to use it, and then you do some kind of a patchwork, and then human beings have to combine or do a patchwork of various fragmented footages. So conclusion is that at this point in time, the use of AI is like a compromise on the part of creators. So CG creators create work, human CG creators. You can have an exchange of views with the human CG creators and improve the quality of a work to complete the work, but AI cannot do it. You cannot really have a constructive interaction with the AI solution at this point in time, unfortunately. So in that sense, the use of AI may be useful when you don't have enough time or budget or human resources. When you have to work with a limited amount of resources and make expressions, then AI could be a rather powerful tool. Having said that, for a producer, if you want to realize your vision 100%, then you need to work with human creators. That would really be the best way. So now I'd like to wrap up in a moment. So AI can create new expressions and a new storytelling. That's the question? Can AI create new expressions and storytelling? Unfortunately, my answer is no, because AI doesn't have any intention or sentiments or life. It learns materials, and then when it's called upon, it makes an input. That's what AI is all about. So it doesn't have a story to tell. Story can be told by humans only, and humans only can express such stories at this point in time. So AI is just an auxiliary tool, complementary tool. Now, the theme of my talk is the future of co-creating with AI. So using AI as an auxiliary or complementary tool. AI is subordinate to human beings, so it's not really about co-creating with AI. So the tool will be controlled in an even better manner, and even if it becomes even more user-friendly, I believe that my view will remain the same, because AI doesn't have a motivational desire to express something. So in that sense, AI makes an input, so it is a rather vacant presence. So to create the future of co-creating with AI, AI has to have an intention, a sentiment, and a life, and it has to become more like a human being type of presence. So now changing my topic a little bit, there is a sci-fi creator, AI 2041 was the novella he or she created. This is about predicting social changes brought about by AI in 20 years' time. In this story, for the next 10 years, there will be AI natives, and they grow up with AI. The protagonist or main character of this novella is an autistic boy, and he can only communicate with others through AI. So AI becomes a part of his identity in the end, and it becomes accepted in the society. That is what the storyline looks like. And when I read this shorter story, I came up with an idea. So AI is an extension of your own spirit in the external world. If I elaborate on that, there is a spirit of human beings, and the framework of that could change going forward. So such future generations will live with AI and come up with new expressions and stories to tell, and then they can change the social values. In my case, for the next generation, I'd like to pass the baton to the future generations. That is my role. And going forward, the relationship between humans and AI would be explored. That is what I want to do through my work. Finally, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to give a talk like this. I am most honored, and my thanks go to audience for your kind attention. Nakajima Ryo, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakajima. Next keynote speaker is Mr. George Murphy, VFX supervisor.
It's an honor to be here today, to be able to share with you some thoughts and follow on the great presentations that have happened before, all interesting things. I come to this talk, my background is as a visual effects supervisor and as a photographer and a filmmaker, and a lot of my focus these days is on, well, the title is The Evolution of Real-Time VFX, but VFX is, in this sense, is really talking about virtual production and the intertwining of visual effects and virtual production. So, in truth, it's that and other emerging filmmaking solutions. So, the group I work with, we're focused on trying to find the best way to take advantage of these new technologies as we go forward. And the way it has evolved, we've started calling it filmmaking 2.0 because you're taking a lot of things that we've done in traditional ways, but you're changing the order that you do them in and the way you interact with them. So you're doing some of the same things, but you're doing them with different tools and very differently. So this responsive framework for working with films where you have visual feedback and you have more collaborative environments is suitable for films as well as episodics and other narrative kinds of visual media. We'll speak of it in film terms, but it actually applies to a lot of things. So the things that I'll get into here are, how these responsive and collaborative workflows are changing the process of how we come up with the concepts around films, the ideation, how it affects the creation of the actual content, and in that whole process, the actual development of the story. We'll talk about how this is different from traditional visual effects workflows, because it's tied to them, but it changes the way that you do that. One of the key significances of the virtual production workflow we'll be talking about is around its flexibility and the kind of visibility it provides to the process. So it's flexible in the sense that it's responsive. You can see what you're doing, you can change things, you can interact and collaborate, and you can visualize things in a way that is much closer to where you're going to go with your final look and your final products. That visibility is really key to, one, helping you understand how to do the creation you're doing, but also letting your collaborators understand where you're going, whether that's other actors, other members of the film crew, the studio, the people that are spending the money on the project. It's a good ground to inspire confidence. So that's one of the key things about the virtual production workflow. The other part of it is, as you look at projects, looking at the production strategies that can balance what you can do with it, what it's good at, versus the other methods that are still very valid that you will still want to do, from traditional VFX to regular live action filmmaking to miniatures and other kinds of things you would still approach. It's not the magic bullet to do everything with, but when you use it the right way, it can be a very powerful tool. The other key part of that is the sort of this
cohesive integration of all the parts and processes that go into a production. Very often you have pre-production and there's a team that works on that, and then you get into production and some of those pre-production people go away. And then you get into post and none of those early people are involved in the back end. And the most effective way to approach this kind of filmmaking is to make sure there's a cohesive collaboration with key individuals across that whole project. So you have a continuity of vision and you have a continuity of direction and approach to how you're trying to solve the visual problems. And last thing is I'll touch briefly on, I mean, there's been some great things put out there about where AI is going. And while we're seeing it rear its head in some of what we do, we can still talk about the general principles of virtual production without getting into too many of the details of AI just yet. It'll be a good thing for the panel, though. So looking at this process, and there's a lot of new technologies and things are evolving, but it's not about the shiny new tools. It's really about, when it's used effectively, it's about allowing directors and other creatives to work in organic and natural ways to be able to do things that they already know how to do. They know how to tell a story, they know how to frame a shot, they know what they're trying to do, and the goal is to get there as directly and succinctly as possible, or even to explore that with more freedom and try things. Normally on a budget and a schedule, you don't have much time to experiment. You don't have much time to explore an idea and see where it goes. So one of the really beneficial things about this process is it can bring back that freedom and even serendipity where you can discover things that you didn't originally intend and adapt and run with those and help improve the final product you're trying to do. And this gives you more time to actually refine the work as you get towards the back end. So doing this in more meaningful, creating these visualizations in more meaningful ways that allow you to get out of the development process and the production process something closer to what you ultimately are trying to achieve. And this also is key to helping the other stakeholders in the process, as I was saying before, to sort of understand what you're doing and become participants in that process. So keying in on that, having confidence in an idea where you're going, being confident to spend money up front that you're used to spending at the back end of a project, those are things that producers and studios are beginning to get their heads around, but it's still a tough sell sometimes because they're worried that, well, we're going to do all this stuff up front, but then we're still going to have to do it again at the back end, so we're going to spend that money twice. And as this kind of a workflow evolves and everybody gets used to working with it, you learn how far to take things to that front end. What are the things that are going to stick? What are the things that you know are going to change anyway, and not to spend the time on those things. And even for non-effects oriented films, things that you're not worried about visual effects at the back end, the visualization power of these tools allows you to get your head around a project and how you're going to shoot it. On Death on the Nile, Ken Branagh was having a challenge trying to figure out how to shoot this 240-foot boat we just built for this thing, and where to put the cameras and how to stage the actors and the action that had to move all around this stuff. By being able to use some of these technologies where he could virtually stand on the boat and look around and see what you saw on the different sets and put virtual placeholder characters and see what we saw of the environment out the window, he was able to start to get his head around this thing. And he's not a technologically friendly guy. He doesn't care about the thing. He knows what he wants to do. But these kind of tools allowed people like that to get their head around projects in a more direct way, to see it in advance, so that when you show up for the shoot, you kind of know, okay, I only need this kind of camera, I'm only going to try to do this kind of setup, and you don't bring a bunch of extra kit or spend a lot of time sorting it out while the crew's standing around. You actually can go in and informed and know how you're going to approach the shoot. So there's a lot of efficiencies to get through that. So when I say we here, I'm talking a lot about, there's two companies that have come together to form DNEG 360. DNEG 360 is a joint venture between DNEG, which is a very established visual effects house, worked on a lot of big promotions, and Dimension Studios has made its way as a virtual production company, and they've come together under this collaboration called DNEG 360, of which I am, while I am a visual effects supervisor and have worked with DNEG, I'm now the creative director of DNEG 360, starting to work in really trying to bring together all of these technologies. And just a really little quick background. So DNEG has worked on a lot of films that you will have seen and know about and done some very challenging things in pure visual effects. Whereas Dimension, and now together in this form of DNEG 360, has been focusing on virtual production and bringing that to some major productions. So Those About to Die TV series was about 3,000 shots in that whole series were shot on an LED stage using virtual production, and of course all the lead up to what it takes to make that work. The Last Airbender involved some virtual productions. Time Bandits was a really good example of a production that they just thought of virtual production as just another part of visual effects, because it's all about any of those things that you're not going to put in front of the camera normally that you need help with extending. You know, there's effects you do in post with green screens and digital and CGI or filmed elements, and then there's virtual production where you take advantage of the things that you can do to get stuff in front of the camera, but in a more real-time responsive way. A number of other productions have been involved in doing that. Here, which has not yet come out yet, used it a lot for some of the set pieces outside the environment for the main part of the show. There were some other AI technologies involved there. Magnific AI did some real-time deepfake de-aging of Tom Hanks in that show as well. That wasn't one of the things that we did, but they have a specialty in that sort of thing. And it worked to visualize it in advance, and then in non-real time they would do some of the post work on that. So, you know, the discussion about AI and slimming things down, almost no matter what, storytelling on a big scale or even on a medium scale is really, it's a team sport. No one person can do it yet, although that day may be coming. You know, the iPhone has democratized filmmaking. There's a lot of tools coming in the way. AI is definitely, as we've seen, you know, starting to make it so that a small group of people can create large things, and more that will be, you know, more directed and more specific things, but we can get into that. But in the traditional sense of it, a film has a number of key people at the center of the production. You know, you have the director and the director of photography, the art director. These are all the normal roles that might be, and if it's an effects film, there'll be a VFX supervisor or an animation director if there's animation involved. And when you introduce virtual production, you have to add a few more people to that piece of the puzzle. You have a virtual production supervisor who is very closely adjoined to what a visual effects supervisor does, but is vested in actually what has to happen on that stage on the shoot day and all the things that go into that. And then you get much more involved at the front end with the layout you're doing in 3D and your digital content that has to happen up front. And of course, you have a VP producer to go in addition to your visual effects supervisor. And then all of these people in the perfect world participate in every step of the project journey, from development through pre-production, production, and post. Now, not all of them will need to be full-time through that whole journey, but they need to be involved if you're going to have a cohesive direction and approach to things and be making sure that the people up front are making the right answers. So we kind of call this, like, we'll look at it as sort of this evolution of script to screen in the approach. And what we're trying to do is this idea that if you get involved right up front, even at the script stage, so you start understanding how the story is being told and you start thinking about what are the best ways to actually realize that story. You know, maybe the way a scene is written could be shot a different way and be just as effective and tell the story just as powerfully, but can take advantage of some of the tools and things that you can use. So you can look at this, if you're partnered at the very front of it, you know, you can help guide how a story is going to be told to take advantage of the things that will make it, you know, achievable in some cases, or more affordable or more practical. Always the goal is to never lose the intent of the story. And by the way, this is not, it's going to be presented as a linear flow, but these things go back and forth. They're not in just one order. You might take a step forward or a step back, depending on what part of the film you're working on. So on the production side of it, one of the key things that's happened on a traditional film, even an effects film, but virtual production, there used to be the art department that was responsible for building the physical set, and the virtual art department that was responsible for building all of the digital assets. And the truth is, both teams use the same tool sets these days, some of them slightly different. But in a proper production, we've started integrating them into one. It's an art department that has people that focus on physical things and virtual things, and they share the design work and they share the asset work. I mean, even I go back to Death on the Nile, where we were collaborating with the art department, and they had models that they were making of some of the sets they were planning to build. We would take those in as a starting point to do rough layouts and camera layouts and ideation of how you might want to shoot some of those things. Or the camera crew would come in and look at some of our sets and say, put a camera up above this set of Abu Simbel, and it says, okay, tomorrow we got to run a 150-foot crane. So that kind of just taking advantage of the information in a really communicative, collaborative way was really important. But this is particularly important with the production design part of the process, that if you're not going to have something that starts out in one design for all the real-time stuff and then changes when you have to get into VFX and you're doing things with some different kinds of tools. Now, the heart of virtual production in advance of the actual production part is visualization. And this is about real-time or responsive technology so that you can build worlds and layouts, create assets, look at what they are, work out your story, work out how you're going to film it, solve a lot of the things around crafting your story and the timeline and the edit that you want to know before you do the shoot. And so, as we'll get into, there's several kinds of visualization that might happen in this process, but they really enable the development of the narrative and the action and the planning, and ultimately you can go understand how you intend to light and film it if that's your intent on a project. So once you've kind of figured out where you're really going with a project, you get into digital pre-production, and that's where you actually start building the real assets you're going to be using for your virtual production work, and these have to be thought of if it's going to be a VFX show as well, that you're trying to do these cohesively so that the assets you're building for real time can flow directly into what's happening in visual effects, and you're not just doing the same thing twice. And that's been the big fear, and it's been a bit of a challenge because the tools haven't always talked to each other, and more we're figuring out that if we start treating the effects work as different aspects of the same process and the same team, then it becomes a more cohesive, cost-effective, and successful process. Then you get into digital production, which is really the heart of it. It's what your impression of virtual production is, the LED screens and shooting on a stage in front of them with live action. And it's called in-camera VFX because the background behind them is effectively the digital recreation of what's extending those sets. And you frame them in the cameras, and if everything is done the right way, that's it. It's a final in camera. Your director knows what he's looking at. Your DP knows what they're looking at. The actors know what's around them, which is a big win, actually. It changes the performance instead of being on a green screen. So in digital production, that's one of the key things. But there's also other things you'll do in digital production with AR and VR to look at sets, or it might be a green screen set or a blue screen set that you want to film, but the cameraman wants to know how to frame. So you might be able to, on a monitor, show what that virtual set extension is, even if you're not shooting on LED screens. And there's a number of ways, and we'll see a few of those in terms of how digital production manifests itself. And then finally, after that, you get into post-production. And one of the big components of post-production can be more visualization, post-viz, as it's called. And it's all the same things you might do at the front end. And depending on your production, usually it's those things. Well, when you actually shoot performers, you actually shoot your story, you shoot your locations, your actors, you shoot everything on, maybe some of it's on an LED screen, maybe some of it's on location, some of it's on a blue screen set. You still need to finish filling in the holes to what that story looks like so that you can understand the edit you're doing, the story you're telling, and then after that, so that the studio knows that the story you're telling and they believe that it's all good and everything's going well. And then lastly, so that you can communicate as succinctly as possible everything that you're expecting to see in those shots, so that when you do go into VFX post, which is very expensive and very labor intensive, or can be, that the direction is really clear and you don't have a lot of artists standing around waiting for clear direction or a change of decision. The post-viz time, even the post-editorial time on most productions is too short, and there's a lot of wastage in VFX because of that. And studios, and I've had this conversation with some studios as well, that there needs to be enough time to sort the edit out, especially if it's comedy or humor in the dialogue and the performances are changing the way the cut goes, to get that right so that you're not doing things in post and then changing your mind and coming back and throwing out that work and doing it again because you've now changed the performance or picked a different take or done things. So the post-end side of it still plays into this whole front-to-back unified kind of collaboration. So diving in a little deeper, at the script end, we break it down into the story development, the methodologies and cost of strategies, figuring out how you're going to do it, and then the actual development of the project. And key in that, story development is what we're saying. We can look at how you're approaching the story and help try to understand, are there things about the story and the way we want to tell it that might take advantage or leverage tools and processes that are available. And it might be a visual effects process. You might decide, okay, this would be good for virtual production. This should be live action. This should be a location. And figure out the best solution, the most efficient solution, and the most productive solution to what that is. But take that holistic approach to that and try to maximize the power of that. And then when you get into the methodologies, there's all the usual things of breakdowns in logistics and finance. And this, again, here is where you really come to fruit in tailoring the content and the visualization strategies to suit the production. And in that mix, as you're trying to do that, will come, that's your typical mood board stage too. You might have storyboards at that beginning phase. You start looking for mood boards. AI, this is a safe place for AI generative imaging when you're just playing with ideas. You're not going to use them as content, but you've got an idea and you're looking for variations, and that starts to creep in. We haven't used it a whole lot particularly yet, but it feels like that's a place that will gain a lot of ground because it's, well, production designer can draw an image and they can use AI to say, based on my style and my image, give me 2 or 3 variations. And then they may like those or they may use those as inspiration to create some new ideas. So at that level, and that really gets into production design, but even at the pitch, at the storyboard level, the pitch level, at this point, you're trying to define the feel and the mood of your story, but you're also wanting to be able to share it in a way that other people will understand. I mean, I just recently, one of the pitch decks we just looked at, story things, realized that the fact that it was actually all generative imaging, all the character representations of things, but we had a really clear idea of where they were going to go. That's not going to be the look of the final things, but it made it clear to communicate the intent and the idea in a sort of a safe, non-published kind of way. I mean, there's still discussions about the sourcing of that, and how you're doing it. So I'm not going to pretend that that's still not going to be an issue, but it is certainly an area where you'll see it starting to gain ground. So we get into production design, and this is, again, where I'm going to reinforce that idea of integrating the digital art department and the practical art department. This is also where you can start to do rapid prototyping. In tools like Unreal Engine, there are library assets and existing things, and we may have in our own library things we've already built where you can quickly mock up. It's almost like doing the cardboard maquettes you used to do or the foam core maquettes you used to do to work out a set and do a thing. You can rough these things in so you can quickly start to block out the idea of a story and how it would actually live in front of a camera in the real world. And it begins to jumpstart the whole visualization process. But at this point, you're working roughly and you're trying to come up with ideas. And it starts with storyboards. It starts with some concept art. It may start off the mood boards that you've already done in advance of that. So key with that production designer, and again, I'm going to reinforce this idea, is following with a single identity. Because there's a lot of shows that they'll hire a production designer and then they'll go away very quickly after some point when they've done a few drawings, and then the production feels like they can just run with that. But because of the interactive and the design nature of this process, you want that continuity of design, even if it's not full-time, to happen at the ideation stage where you're creating your ideas, but also at the design stage of all your core assets, and then at the implementation stage when you're actually bringing those things to fruition, especially at the back end, and that vision is maintained and that core continuity is maintained. So you go all the way from a sketch and a concept all the way to something more finished. And that production designer may only go through the virtual production side of it and not go into post, but ideally you've got that support all the way through. Once again, the integration, in this image here, you've got a practical set where you had the art department do all of those props, and in the background are the virtual mountains in the virtual set that the digital art department did, but they worked together to do the same kinds of things. We'll talk a little bit more about some of that as we go here. Well, for instance, on Time Bandits, they would make physical models that they were going to shoot as reference. We'd scan them, and they'd build practical huts. Those were all art department things. You'd scan those, and then you'd bring them in so that your digital assets that extended were actually based on the physical assets that you did. And artists had to still manipulate them and refine them and get them to work properly in the digital world. But it's that collaboration of creative intent between the real world physical part of the filming and the virtual part of the filming, and trying to bring those together. And then you get into this mode of rapid ideation. And with some of these tools, you can actually get something that feels much farther along very quickly, because there's really robust library assets for environments and buildings and environments and sets. And even if these aren't your final designs, you can quickly sort of start putting some things together to start getting an idea of what's going on. You can use Google Earth for some things. So this is even before you actually go out there and start doing your own original captures. But this ability to quickly and in real time move around and explore these things. The care you have to take is you actually don't want to overlight them, you don't want to over detail them, because you're not committing to those things yet, because you're not ready to commit to all those details yet. And sometimes when you're just focusing on story, we dial back from the level of detail on these things so that you can focus on action and blocking and timing and the cut and the editorial process. So, so you don't always want to go this far, this fast. So these are the many flavors of pre-production visualization. We break them down into virtual scout and block, which is, once you've played with some things, and again, that's why I say this isn't a linear process. Some of what you were just seeing is the beginning of virtual scout and block. You block in some things. They're not final character representations. They're not final worlds you're going to be working, but they give you enough to start blocking out the story and understanding the landscape that you're telling your story in. And a good example of that, on Death on the Nile, we were out for the location scout, and literally I was running behind, actually getting behind the director's discussion of what we intended to do, shooting reference images of these locations so that we could come back and make really rough models. They weren't official scans and captures. We'd send the capture team out later to do really high fidelity things, but they were enough that would allow us to do some really nice visualizations for our scout and block sessions. And then when you do those scout and blocks, there's a number of ways you can do them. I mean, one early way to do it is to immerse them. So it's as if you're doing real location scouts. You put on a VR headset and you have a puck, and you can frame a virtual camera, a virtual VCam, inside of the set, and you can frame up shots and say, oh, this is going to be an interesting angle, or this location is going to be really great. Let's bookmark that. We'll grab a frame of that. We'll record a video of that so we can come back later and see what that looks like. You might also do that with regular sort of iPad scouting, the way that we were just seeing, where you can sort of see the world and you can move around, you can frame cameras. And we do that a lot in motion capture too, where the actors are in mocap suits, but through a viewfinder, a digital viewfinder effectively, or what we call a VCam, you can see the world and the character that's being puppeteered by the performer who's in the mocap suit, and you can frame shots and work out that you've got the right performances. So this is just a quick little bit just to show some of the things. Those little rectangles are where I shot photographs from, and all those angles allow us to recreate a 3D model. In this case, it's a point cloud, but eventually that can get turned into real geometry that can be used. Now, these are fairly low resolution compared to what we need for the final film, but they give a little bit of an idea. And then you could use them in Unreal to build these kind of views and worlds, because the tool is very good for fleshing out secondary things and environments. And then if you're working with VR headset, you can go in and you could do your scouting, different environments. You could be playing with the lighting while you're doing this. You can record it, grab frames. And then the other part of that is using the iPad to scout around and see what the world is. Now, if you had a mocap stage and a mocap actor, you could see that mocap actor puppeteering a character in that scene as well and see what's going on around them. So StoryViz is where you get to the point where you're now trying to make sure you're understanding what the real story is you're trying to tell. So it's really about narrative and action, and it can incorporate one of the things we'll talk about later, which is called stunt viz. Anything that blocks out what your characters are doing, the world they're in, and you start breaking the story down into actual shots. You're trying to understand camera perspectives and how you're going to approach that. In this world, you can do that in a fairly interactive, real-time way, and you can go as far as you need to go. Not every shot needs to be figured out to this level of detail. And for the next level, CineViz, which is a lot like game cinematics, where things look pretty close to real, but they're still, still not spending the effort to make them absolutely photoreal. And those, you'll only take a few things up to that level because you don't, you want to understand your creative intent, but you usually don't need to do it for every shot in the movie, and you're trying to prove out key processes, and you're also going to use it to show actors and show the studio where you're going, and you can take some things to that next level, a particular scene or a few shots, and you can go to that. So in this is a little example of that process. So in this case, they're starting with performance capture. Actors in a mocap suit, and there's an environment that's already been built. There's some correlation where you take the performers and you build in near time some decent representations of them. You're using the library assets in this case and sometimes even flat cards to represent some of the environment. And this was a bit of a little horror story thing that was done. And so this is what something taken to a cinematic level does. And this plays in real time, this level. You can take it up to a higher level if you don't play it in real time. But it's very responsive technology that lets you push very far with this kind of things. And it can give you those atmospheric things like lens flares and atmospheric lighting. And if you don't do it in real time, you can increase the quality of the renders so that it emulates real life a bit more. Other pieces of the visualization process might include stunt viz, which usually gets rolled into the story viz, but you're just trying to, in that you're actually trying to figure out how an action sequence should happen, the best way to capture it. And there's some technical things around that where you want to understand how you're going to rig it, where the camera's got to be, what the mounts are going to be. It allows you to get your head around both the creative and the technical side of how you shoot stunts safely and in an effective way to get what you're after on that. The sketch viz, which I don't have a good example with me here, is very analog animators drawing characters on a live action background. We've used it in several films. Even one of the shows that's going on right now is doing it right now, because it's a quick way, especially if you have animated characters that are not real, even if they're going to be photoreal later on. A sketch artist can sketch key poses and key frames and compositions very quickly, and it's a really quick way before you get into digitally manipulating that character to understand the blocking, and the editor can fill in his cut with the sketch viz and understand the story. And that's actually probably the biggest use of it is, especially if you have dialogue and audio working, you can take the sketch viz and very quickly, without all the other technological visualization, fill in some things about character and timing in the cut when you're trying to work out your story. And then the tech viz is around understanding how to shoot things that require a lot of, well, it's obvious, like technical setups. We use it when we're even trying to plan out how we're going to shoot on an LED stage to know how much space and room we're going to have for the set pieces and where the camera's going to be able to be and what kind of cranes or equipment are going to be needed to shoot that. You definitely need it if you're doing things for motion-based work where you're flying things around on mechanical robotic arms. In this case example that you're seeing here, TechViz is being used to plan out how to do an amusement park ride that has a lot of cinematic content and storytelling. It's a derivative off of some of the Harry Potter work. And the TechViz allows you to actually understand what the user's experience is going to be through this ride, but also plan all the technical things about how you create that content. Okay, so once, and again, it's not truly linear, but I'm pretending it is just for so we can talk about it. But so just before you go into production, you go into digital pre-production, and there'll be a lot of pieces of this, and some of them again overlap the visualization side of it, where you're actually now, focusing on your digital captures for your real final assets. And this is why I say this overlaps back. Your visualization, the more advanced it gets, is going to lean into these captures and these assets you're building, you know, in this sort of silo of the process. And it's always great to start with things in the real world as opposed to just making things up. So we do a lot of scanning real locations and environments. We might scan characters and actors, and that's a much more complicated process depending on whether it's going to be them and look exactly like them, or whether it's going to be a fictional character or a creature that you're going to be making up along the way. Environments, just like with the Egypt stuff, you're capturing a bunch of different ways and vehicles and props. And then you'll use them in the end to really drive the difference between the physical builds and the digital builds. Okay, in this image here, the red in the background is all the virtual set extension. This is an office scene. The foreground woman who's acting and just the first few cubicles are practical set piece. When you see the final film, they all look like they belong together. Again, here the grid is the piece that was done for the virtual part. And it all is a very naturalistic, you know, environment. And you got there in part by capturing real-world assets that relate to the same props you were going to use and building them into the digital world. On a more elaborate level, for those about to die, these are some of the environments that were built that go behind many of the scenes in that process of ancient Rome. And these were super elaborate things. And as detailed as these are, if you got really close to them, you know, they're designed to work specifically in that LED environment. If you're coming in for a close-up, you might still need to add more detail if you were carrying them all the way into visual effects post-production. So there's a decision made about how much effort and how much time you spend on these things to flesh them out. And then this is just a little bit about some other kinds of world building. Virtual production is a great environment for building sets and worlds. And again, the level of realism you need to make the shot work is what drives how far you go with it. Some of these things may look stylized if you study them standalone, but because they might just be out of focus in the background in some other way, you don't spend that energy pushing them farther than you need to make them go. But you do reference a lot of real-world things in that process, and the same design work will then go into anything that's going to go into post-production. It's certainly the same design work is going into what's happening in the physical set in front of you. So one more, and then we'll... So referencing a lot of real-world things to build this kind of a set. Now, you know, that wouldn't hold up on its own by itself in a movie, but as a background out of focus behind some things, that level of thing worked pretty well. And sometimes you combine a variety of things. For instance, in this set, there were physical huts, there were the digital huts and things, there were filmed background plates of forests taken from location. You can combine all of those sorts of things. So, and I'm going to skip past this one just for a second here because I'm worried about time. So the other thing that you might do in digital pre-production is kind of what I'm going to call pre-production visual effects. Sometimes you need things rendered to a higher level of quality than you can do in a real-time engine. Like it might be a creature that needs to be on the wall. It might be a simulation like fire or water that more and more you're starting to be able to do that in the real-time tools, but maybe not quite. You can do those in traditional VFX methods and bring those in as we'll call them pre-bakes, where there's ways to bring those assets into the real-time virtual production world and play them back in real time. Sometimes this is images rendered on cards. Sometimes you can actually retain the 3D volume, which is important if the camera's going to be moving around, because the whole point of having that world be 3D is that the camera can move around and the perspective matches exactly what is happening with the foreground and the background. There's complete unity of those things. And the other component that you'll lean into is motion graphics, which everybody kind of overlooks, but there might be, you know, if you want screens and things in the background to be happening in the shot, certain kinds of motion graphics, you'll do them in advance. A lot of times you'll add them in post. Nobody always takes the time to pre-build those so that they display right on the device, on the day, on a set. It would be a lot easier if they did. So usually that ends up falling into post-production, but that can land on either side of the fence there. So just some more motion graphics. A lot of times, though, in the real-time world, you'll put in placeholders because there might be interactive lighting from an explosion or something. So even if that isn't the final version of a thing, you want that lighting to take advantage of that interactive lighting, because that is truly one of the key things about shooting in a volume is you get the real lighting, you get the reflections, you get the transparency and refraction, and you're immersed in that world. And that combined with some practical set lighting can get you across the line. And that's when you get into things like pre-light things. So we're moving on to digital production here. So in that first stage, pre-light, where you've done testing and stuff before this point, because pre-light really needs the director, the DP, and a number of other expensive people that you don't want to bring in before you have to. So you get it all set up so it's generally working, and then you do pre-light, which they don't have much patience to spend too much time on, so hopefully you're pretty close to what's right. And if they make changes, then you have to scramble. So this is from Those About to Die, and there's the set piece and several practical set items. There's the lighting from a sunset. The overhead LED screens can be used to move lighting objects around, sometimes negative lighting, positive lighting to create fill and bounce. If you need hard light, that's the one thing the LED screen doesn't do. You'll end up putting in practical lights into that kind of a situation. Here's another little lighting setup going on for Those About to Die, and you can see the screen and the set piece, and there's some practical fill, and the top screen is being used to add a lot of soft fill. But that's what it looks like through the camera at the right exposure. So the only thing that ever matters is what the camera sees in the situation. It's like sidewalk art. If you're not standing in the right place, it looks completely wrong. But if it looks right through the camera, that's your goal. And the camera is always tracked live, so that as the camera moves, perspective moves, everything stays in line. And here's another scenario where they're using bounce cards to create that soft overcast light onto a practical set with LED wall having snowstorm going on in the background. And so now here's this is the heart and soul of virtual production, is these in-camera composites. And they can happen on an LED volume with full live action, a full set. The stage we shoot at in Cinecittà down in Rome is 28 meters across, and it rotates, so you can build a pretty elaborate set, and then the regular stage that comes off the back of that goes even deeper, so you can combine frontage in front of that and go to the back. The vehicle process, where you're, most of your car shots, you don't have to go out on the street to shoot. You go out and you film real background plates, and you use those as your reflection environment, and you can shoot those under more control. But that's a much smaller volume where you want to fill in all the gaps so you don't get black lines and holes in your reflections. And then there's custom builds, like for here, we just built a special screen outside the windows. For some productions, you do them bespoke to what that little bit of extension you need to see, if it makes more sense than doing it later in post. So this bit here is, during the strikes, we had some downtime, and we decided that we needed to be able to, we wanted just to do some examples of the different ways you would do virtual production and different shoots. So we had 3 weeks to plan this, where we wrote scripts, storyboarded, cast, production design, built sets, and in 5 days we shot 5 different setups and 5 different stories. Now normally you have a lot more time than that, but we wanted just to prove how fast and how responsive you could do something on a production. And in a real production, it might be that you're planning just changing angles on a thing or moving stuff around. So this is a good little piece. I apologize, it's all in English yet, and I hope the translators can keep up. But if not, we'll work something out. But it visually is a really good example of the way you use in-camera VFX.
We're here to test shooting setups that haven't been possible in virtual production, but we now know that with the advances of technology, with improvements in Unreal Engine, we've set up a series of scenarios that are going to test that and demonstrate how we can take it into next year.
We got the chance to essentially shoot some of the greatest hits. So we've created 5 shoot days. We've done a different thing every day to really show the evolution of where we've got to now.
The beauty about this wall is that it's big enough for us to do pretty much anything we want to do on it.
And on top of that, we have a rotating stage, which enables us to do fast turnarounds. We can prep on one side of the stage and shoot on the other, or we can do reverse shots just by turning the stage.
The first day, we shot an exterior scene in a cold forest where we were able to really get the sense of a true exterior.
To get shots like we did, you'll be out freezing with all your crew overnight. If you don't get your shot, you need to come back the next day because, you know, we wanted the perfect shot where the sun is just dying. So you got 15 minutes if you're on location to shoot that shot. We shot it in 30, 40 minutes. And then the last two shots, we shot them in 7 minutes each.
Gun.
So that's something that just doesn't happen on location.
Day 2 was probably the biggest shot of the week. It was the Colosseum. Often scenes like this are shot on location, but we want to make it more convenient and push the fidelity and the freedom of what a shoot can be like on an LED stage like this.
The screens are getting higher quality and the pitch of the bulbs is getting finer, so we're shooting wide-angle shots, which used to be like a no-no. Like, you shoot long lenses, throw the screen out of focus. We've got the screen in focus.
We've captured people as scans, and then they've created cards.
We had some clever lighting techniques and shader tricks that allowed us to light those flat cards as if they're 3D.
This scene has 80,000 volumetric actors. 80,000 is a critical number that means you could fill any kind of football stadium, music stadium, anything that has a large crowd.
And then one for one, have every single one of them doing their own animated movement was a first.
Why don't you take me out in that boat of yours? We'll get a lovely view of the fireworks from the water.
We went straight from an epic scene like the Colosseum to a really intimate scene. Because often period drama isn't considered for a big technical stage like this, but it's actually the perfect kind of scene.
So what we did was show that something like glass or like a very fine sort of netting, for example, is very hard to clean up with green screen. But this we do all in camera. So you get the natural reflections, you get natural refraction of light, and that all bounces through the scene, and it just gives a much more sort of natural look than you would get with green screen.
You're really getting a sense that it's a true location that you're viewing. The prison scene is set in a Roman temple, but with really interesting lighting conditions. Because it's such an interesting location with very high ceilings, really interesting windows and pillars, it's the perfect location to test advances in lighting.
We did the first in-camera test of a bunch of new technology around rendering, where we rendered using caustics and some new NVIDIA rendering technologies for the first time ever. And it really worked.
The big thing with this is we're using our custom RTX build that's been made by our Unreal developers in Dimension. So it pretty much allows, you know, better ray tracing, real-time caustics, lots more lumen lights, because a big hold-up of current engines that you can have 4 lumen lights at a time. With this we can have like unlimited, and we get proper refraction.
It's really exciting because it's going to give a level of realism to our lighting that's never been seen before. So today is the bedrock of virtual production, the driving plate. We're shooting with a rainbow and a wind machine, and we're capturing reflections in not just the car itself, but the raindrops, the wing mirrors, and having a wraparound stage like this really allows those things to shine and have a believability to them that you can't get anywhere else.
We've done 5 completely different setups in 5 days intentionally, because we were really looking at not only the visual quality of virtual production, but the efficiency of virtual production.
If sci-fi was the first wave of virtual production, where we needed to imagine impossible worlds on a screen like that, I think the second wave is really driven by being able to transport you to anywhere through history, any kind of costume, any kind of place, in a shooting environment that allows true performance and intimacy. It's a real game changer, and I think writers and producers are just sort of discovering now that they have sort of limitless options.
Okay, I think we'll close on that bit because the rest is details that aren't as interesting as that. You get into the post side, and you're familiar with the post side probably more anyway, so that's a good place to stop.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Well, thank you very much. I would like to start a panel discussion from now on. I'd like to introduce each speaker. For the panel discussion, I would like to introduce panelists one by one. The moderator will be Hollywood reporter, Asia editor, Mr. Patrick Brzeski. Please give him a big round of applause. Next, a film producer who gave a lecture earlier on, Mr. Alex Borden. Mr. Borden. Next, another film director, CEO of Super Zeus, Mr. Ryo Nakajima. Last but not least, the VFX supervisor, Mr. George Murphy. Mr. Murphy. Now I'd like to hand over to Mr. Patrick Brzeski. Patrick-san, please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Patrick Brzeski, and I'm the Asia Bureau Chief at The Hollywood Reporter. I'd like to begin just by reiterating our collective thanks to this esteemed industry and government audience for being here with us today. As you know by now, we have a great group of speakers here with us who approach the questions of technology and filmmaking from very different angles. The purpose of this panel is to follow up on their fascinating keynotes from earlier in the seminar with a wide-ranging discussion of the latest trends surrounding generative AI and other technologies in global production. I'm hoping it can be a freewheeling, casual chat, so I urge my panelists to feel free to jump in and ask each other questions and follow-ups as you see fit. I think we'll start with some production and post-production questions, and then we'll turn to a more speculative discussion of AI as the subject demands. I'll skip the intros because I think you're familiar with who we have here. Most of us have been here for the day. Alex, I'd like to start by asking you a couple follow-ups from your panel because you've gained a really unique set of insights into the realities of bringing big global productions and the Japanese industry together to shoot on the ground in Tokyo at a scale previously not really achieved. So it's a great opportunity to drive home some takeaways. I guess just to sum up the issues you raised, you talked about the tremendous progress that the Japanese industry has made really recently, the production incentive, training programs, but looking ahead to your future return to Japan with new projects, on the regulatory level or the top-level industry level, what are some changes that would really help you when you come back with a big budget project like Tokyo Vice? What would you like to see move forward?
Thank you, and that's a great question because that's the continuation, and I think it's important to look into the crystal ball, but to see a clear future and to then have to discuss together, people in the room and the various different organizations in Japan, how we get there together. Because you have an industry that's opening up, as I said, which is already incredibly encouraging. But what would I like ideally? So coming back to Japan, you want to have options. I think you want to have more freedom than you currently have. You want to know that you won't be squeezed into a corner. You want to know that you'll have flexibility and options and choice because you've already made a choice, which is to bring your project to Japan. So you don't want to find yourself in Japan and find that you're limited in any way, which you wouldn't be elsewhere. And that's the broad strokes. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the reason why I emphasized things like training crew it's because it's actually, the industry was much smaller than I imagined it before I came here. I'd grown up with Seven Samurai and had these amazing, my vision of the Japanese industry was a much bigger industry than the reality that I found. And I didn't really imagine that we'd ever be, that we'd be short of crew in so many different areas. So it's a general, it's also the perception of the industry, actually, to make, for the industry to be more attractive to school leavers, like I said, to join the industry, and to enjoy a career in the industry, and for that to be a fulfilling and financially viable career as well. So there's a lot that that I think that the wheels are turning in the right direction, and they can carry on in this direction and make Japan, a really top destination for, like I said, all scales of projects. We're seeing these shorter term projects and films, but wouldn't it be great to see more series like Tokyo Vice and also Sunny that Georgina produced? Seeing these bigger productions, making Tokyo, Japan, the whole of Japan, their home.
That's great. Yeah, I think the industry's now on the right path. The momentum is palpable, which is really exciting. So turning to some technological issues, I know a lot of the difficulties Tokyo and Vice encountered were more cultural in nature, but what were some of the technological solutions you employed to ease challenges or make things more efficient and cost-effective?
I've got to mention the translation software because it really was a game changer. And by the way, the software that we used the interpretation and translation software 4 years ago. It's got so much better. Oh, yeah. And we know that that's thanks to AI, because every time I make a translation, it remembers it and it learns. And so now I can do real-time interpretation on AI software. It makes a huge difference. So things that the AI is learning all the time. But great, listening to George and seeing your phenomenal examples of the use of volume, because we weren't planning to use VR and volume originally, but we were filming in Nagano in the mountains, up in the snow where you have all sorts of reflection on snow and ice that isn't very favorable for the camera, bumpy roads that aren't very favorable for a smooth camera tracking shot. And so and there was a stage at Toho Studios where we were based, where a company, Hibino, had come in and set up an LED volume stage. So we said, well, why don't we bring the two together and make use of it? And we did exactly that. We created our own rig with the multiple cameras that you need to shoot visual plates up in the mountains as we were driving around. And then we brought those plates back to the volume stage in Toho, in the comfort of Tokyo, and we're able to just have our car, our two actors, the lighting rig, not quite as complicated as some of yours, but just what you need. You've got light, you've got movement, you've got reflections, and it delivered perfect results. And as you say, the performance is enhanced because the actors are completely they believe they're in the situation. It's so much better than green screen.
No, that's exactly right. And as you were doing your talk, I was wondering, that issue of not being able to be on certain locations and tie up certain things, that there might be, and again, it's not a silver bullet, but there might be some solutions to certain aspects of the scenes in the projects that you could take off the street, for instance, and still feel like you're using the locations, because you'll go out and you'll shoot your elements in the real locations, and you'll involve the real content, but then you can do some of that production in away from interfering with the traffic and everybody's daily lives.
Well, that's one reason why it could become a key tool here. And there's excitement globally about it, but there are very practical reasons why we might be using it more here than elsewhere. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Oh, that's great. I guess the flip side to that, though, is for people who want to attract more production to Japan, perhaps the fear becomes maybe they don't need to come to Japan anymore with these powerful technological tools. So, for example, Shogun, not to single out a show, but it had so much success, I think it's okay to do so. They didn't come to Japan, and they used a lot of VFX to recreate feudal Japan in a pretty convincing way. What do you say to that? And first, George, and perhaps Alex, you can share about what you got from being in Tokyo that you wouldn't be able to conceivably recreate digitally?
Well, it'll probably all boil down to economics, right? And if the incentives are there, then there'll be competition. The other thing is, as you said, that, you found that there's not as much local talent available yet in certain areas. And that was very similar to the first time I went out to New Zealand and did some collaboration with Weta. And they were bringing most of the people in from the West there because they had a lot of local employees, but they weren't as skilled. And now you go back there and the majority of their people are all the homegrown people that are now the senior VFX supervisors and the senior artists. It just took time for that to evolve. But you have to create an environment where those people are being exposed and working with the people that do know what's going on, and then they'll grow into it. And they become, when you're working in the place you live, it's a different thing, and it changes the whole nature of the workflow and the work you do. I think that's an important part of the process.
It really does. I'm a firm believer in filming on location if you can, and we've often found ways to make that possible because there are always various different post-production versions. There are also reduced versions, but can you get to the real thing? I mean, working on Sense8, a production where there was a version of that show for Netflix which films around many different cities around the world. We could have shot all of it on stages in a sound stage in Eastern Europe and just done plates on the various around the world, just small moments around the world. But what we decided to do was actually go to all those countries with our cast and with our key crew and film there. And what you get is so much more immersive, it's so much more powerful, it's so much more believable. And I think, post-production VFX are getting better all the time, but it's that, we completely, it's the immersive process of an audience subconsciously processing what they believe is real, and you don't want to take your audience out of that illusion for a second. Otherwise, you want to avoid losing them. So that's a big part of this, and I would always favor location filming if it's practical. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah, I imagine there were countless ways that just being in Japan informed the cultural authenticity in really subtle ways as well. So Nakajima-san, apologies for coming to you late. As we turn to talk about AI, you spoke about the differing reactions to the use of AI in France and South Korea, which is really fascinating. How do you think the anime industry or the Japanese film industry in general currently perceives the promise or potential risks of AI? Could you set kind of that stage for us, how it's seen here right now?
Thank you for the question. With regard to risk involving AI, what is generally being said is the violation of copyrights, whether there is a violation of copyright. That is the most often talked about topic. In our case, designers, the original design produced by designers, we are not going to make a huge change from that original design. Because of those designs, we are preventing violation or infringement of copyrights. That is our approach. When it comes to copyrights, there are various ways of thinking, and regarding infringement of copyrights, the original design, what is the original state of design, and there is an obligation to explain. There is an explanation obligation. As long as we fulfill that obligation, I think we are on the safe side. That is one point. And in other areas, the AI may take away jobs from humans. On this issue, that depends on economic state of a country and the size of filmmaking industry. For instance, in the United States, VFX and extras and script writers, they are against for the use of AI. And however, in the US, we see such a background. However, in the case of Japan, there is a labor shortage, and also creators the creators find it difficult to become rich. Actually, in Japan, that is an issue too. Therefore, by using AI, creators or the film industry in Japan will be benefit from the use of AI. So therefore, I think the risk and the benefits are the two sides of the coin. Therefore, to this issue, personally, my approach, my recommendation is that we have to make rules. Rule making is very important. And the creators have to understand there are issues like this, and they have to create contents in an ethical way. That's all. Thank you.
It's interesting. It makes a lot of sense that the differing perspective on the technology would be tied to the artist's particular position in the industry and how much they have to gain or lose. Alex, George, in your real working, day-to-day working life, has generative AI touched the way you work? Has it yet? And is it forcing you to rethink, I guess, how you think about your work and the future of your work?
Well, it's inevitable that it's going to impact what we do. I mean, it's a freight train coming down the road, and whether we like it or agree with it or think it's right, it is going to become a part of the reality of production. I agree that whole ability to trust the sourcing of the training data that AI is using, and so that you're not actually effectively scraping and stealing other people's original works in that process. Having said that, there are closed training systems, and you do this with actors in certain sets where you train off of their material from other shows and other things so that you can recreate them at a different age or in some different ways. And one of the things we've been looking at too is this idea of creating effectively a digital talent twin portfolio for actors and working with their agents so that they actually own and take control of their digital selves, and it's about look and performance and voice, all those things. And you could go as far down that path as you want, even all the way to a fully informed avatar, I suppose, at some point. But because you need those digital doubles when you're doing dangerous stunts or you have somebody replacing, or there's just a situation where the actor shouldn't be in there and you want to put their face. So you do these scans, and the issue, of course, with the strikes was, but that stuff was being used outside of their agreement. And I think, most of us have always been very, respectful in terms of how that material gets used, but it, it goes in the mix, and you have to be careful about that. So I think, taking some almost proactive action to getting the talent to own their rights and feel like they have some recourse, that they're actually in control of their scans and their things. And one of the things it does is they can walk up to a production and say, oh, well, we've already got the base scans, now let's start on the creative version of what you need to do with it. So there are some advantages to it that, some companies would, one of the things we've explored is that idea of being able to, will help finance, we basically enable some of that. We have, the discussions are very early in that process, but it's an opportunity to fight back on some of that misuse. I mean, these ideas were around when we first started doing mocap and for some of these productions that I was on in 2007, but it was somebody deciding whether they wanted to make that the business there. It's a lot of effort and energy. I think it's a bit more defined now.
Fascinating. And Alex, you as a working producer?
I was interested in the ethics of AI, and that's a huge topic just in terms of, but also I'm fascinated by how, the crystal ball again, where is it going to be in 10 years, in 20 years? Because we're watching it happen in real time, in quite slow motion. We all remember watching Titanic, and James Cameron had managed to get these people to be walking around on the deck of this model. They weren't on the deck, they were sort of floating above the railings, and it was all very imperfect at the time. But it was progress, and it was spectacle, and it wowed us as audiences. And what we keep on wanting to do is to deliver spectacle and to amaze audiences as we go. But it's kind of, things get faster, things get better, we improve as an industry, but I mean, imagine where we're going to be in 10 years, the speed we're traveling at the moment.
How about next week?
See you there.
Yeah. We're a little over time, and I wanted to make sure to give the audience a chance to respond. So would anyone like to ask questions to our distinguished speakers? That's Naman from Variety. Please go ahead. Do we have a microphone that he can use, or?
It's a question for Nakajima-san. So picking up on what you said and what Patrick also picked up on the different reactions to the generative AI in Bucheon and in Annecy. So in your opinion, how can the mindset of the West change towards AI? Right now, it's AI is evil. So do things like James Cameron joining the board of Stability AI, which has a big setup in Tokyo, will that help? What else do you think can be done?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Well, James Cameron, director, he is one of the directors I admire and respect most. And Stability AI, he joined the Stability AI. That fact in itself is, how can I say, he himself is looking into a distant future. That's what I thought by his action. And the technology, not only for us who live our age now, but he's considering the next generation people. Looking into the future, I think he decided to join Stability AI, in my view. Sorry, this is a very abstract way of answering your question, but are you satisfied with this answer?
Thank you very much.
Great. Anyone else? Questions for the panelists? It could be follow-ups to their presentations earlier or something for a general discussion. In the back there.
Japan Film Commission, Sekine is my name. I have a question for George-san and Alex-san. If you know, I'd like to ask a question. LED volume, overall operation or utilization rate. I want to know LED boards operation or utilization rate. And already request to Film Commission and how you're engaged and so on. Do you observe any changes in these regards recently?
I can take a first stab at that. It sort of depends where it is, because there are some LED volume locations that are permanent. For instance, the stage in Italy in Cinecittà, and we're in the middle of moving our London stage to a new place. The Cinecittà stage will probably be booked solid for the next 2 years, starting very shortly, just after the first of the year. On and off. They'll fit other productions in between, which makes you drive to set up a second stage, because you can keep things going and, in the gaps. It really still depends on productions moving forward and people green-lighting those productions, because without that, you're not filling that stage the same way you wouldn't be filling any other stage. They're very fortunately that a lot of the clients we're involved with already have green lights to start moving on their next ones, although they're taking a little longer to start up than they would have normally. But I think the whole industry is moving very slowly at the moment. If we imagine maybe second quarter, third quarter next year, there'll be enough regular volume that, yes, if you were running something like that and you were familiarizing directors and productions with how that works, that they'll take advantage of that. There's also different scales of stage. If you have a car process volume, a smaller stage where you're surrounding cars for in-camera shots, that's bread and butter kind of work. You could keep that kind of thing busy almost all the time on commercials and other things. And the bigger stages, are more selective. But yeah.
I mean, when you're on a stage, how long are you there? Because the bigger productions will come in and not move for a long time.
Well, those about to die, I think they were on the stage for 3 months, but there's a lot of smaller films that are going to be in there for 5 days, 4 days, because they're using it just for a very specific purpose. And generally, you kind of leave the LED stage work for the end of your production after you've shot your other things, so that you know what you were actually able to get in the real world before you waste time duplicating that on the stage.
No, completely. And whenever I've booked in to do volume work, it's been a case of the stage has been pretty busy and you've had to find the days that you can pick up to get in. It's not like they're sitting around empty. So there's demand. And I think importantly, it's not just demand from international productions, but also from commercials, from local productions. Hopefully, if it's there, then people will use it much more often because it's a really useful tool. And ties in with what we talked about before about coming to Japan and having options, having the flexibility to try different technology.
Yeah, a small production can get a lot of production value for their dollar in that kind of environment if you're very selective about how you use it.
Great. So there's opportunity there. What was the second part of your question? It was about the response they're seeing from agencies in Japan?
How film commissions are engaged, because changes coming from the you are using LED volume wall more frequently. Is there any change of the request?
So, if I've understood right, is it something that film commissions are being asked for? Is that the question?
If you are going to use a LED wall for pre-production, and that takes time, and preparation takes time, and also there is a permitting issue as well. In Japan, there are global film commissions. How global film commissions are engaged in preparation phase? If they are engaged in preparation time, maybe request vis-a-vis film commissions may be changing. So that's what I want to know. The request to film commissions are changing?
I think she's asking how film commissions respond around the world to requests for that type of technology, and whether it's like a must-have thing for film commissions to be involved in and to provide to international producers like Alex, like how important and support for that technological need is for a film commission like the Japan Commission.
Yes. No, I was with some film commissioners last week in Spain and having similar conversations, actually, because I think it's so important that the film commissioners are really aware of what what productions need. And that's changing all the time. So being current and being up to date is so important, because you're then better able to understand the needs of the productions that are coming. And technology plays a huge role in that. And having these options, it improves your hand in terms of your chance of bringing a production to that country without a doubt, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, if they support that, because from the production point of view, there isn't so much a direct involvement. It's more receptiveness to the need for that and the things that allow you to do that in these different places that would play a factor in. And then just in case the other part of the question was the prep for the stage work doesn't happen on the stage. That happens in a regular place wherever your artist and your content team is working, just like regular visual effects work.
Yeah, no, we try and stay off the stage for as long as possible.
Absolutely.
Because every day costs, and because this is state-of-the-art technology, it's not cheap. You're paying. It's an important part of your budget, so you really make all of those days on the stage count.
Question over there.
Hi. Yeah, I'm just wondering whether the training and upskilling of talent and crew has been challenging when it comes to virtual productions.
Yes, I would say yes. It's sort of a mixed thing, because the technology is very based in gaming industry technologies, and so there's not as wide of a talent base in the visual effects side and the film side for how to use those tools. So there's still a learning curve and a gap that comes along with that, even though for some of the things you use the same tools everybody else uses outside. I'm talking specifically like somebody that knows how to use Unreal Engine, which is not particularly user-friendly once you get past the first menu. it's very interactive and very fast, but it's not. It's still written from a gaming point of view. I call it a gaming engine that's been tortured into a visual effects tool. It's getting better because the main people behind Epic were actually film people that some of them I've worked with in the past, and so they're actually trying to push it to be friendlier to that level. But it's not an instant transition if you do effects and animation for traditional film work or television. It's not an instant jump into those tool sets, even though we might want to use that person in their original, the tools they're comfortable with. So it's in the sort of middle ground yet, where there still aren't enough people, especially people that are that have the creative skills, but also have the technical skills to do both sides. I think we find ourselves scrapping for good talent.
Is there anywhere in the industry where people can automatically come across from into? Is there anywhere you're finding your crew? Because I'm thinking about CG and Weta in New Zealand and how 20 years ago there wasn't an industry and now there is, and people who had their got their first jobs are now running departments and companies. It's a start on the ladder.
Yes, be kind to your coordinator; they'll be your boss before you. I've seen that happen actually. No, I think you're right. One of the things, well, for instance, in our situation, because we're part of a joint venture with DNEG, we have a good relationship with a whole team of VFX artists, and one of my particular missions is integrating that workflow with the virtual production workflow, which means getting people to understand the way to use both sides of that fence. And there's definitely artists that are excited about that. Epic themselves have been doing a whole series of these very intensive workshops. Somebody just described it as it was more intense than their graduate thesis. I spent 5 weeks doing one of those things, and it is everything they say it is. Just to get your hands in and actually understand it. The trouble is a year later, the tools have changed so much you feel like you don't know it anymore. So you have to really stay on top of it. But I think talent will gradually find itself on both sides of that fence because it's just too accessible a technology and a way of working. And it's something that a small group can learn to do.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, please go ahead. Gentleman in the back.
Hello, my name is Arthel. I'm the CEO of De Arstagios, the 2D animation studio here in Japan. So maybe it's a little bit different than live action, but I had a question about. There was a question earlier about do you prefer doing virtual productions or actually producing the work on location? And so I kind of wanted to add to that question. Do you think that shooting on location allows for inspirations that you didn't foresee, while you're on location, and then through kind of interacting with the local population or kind of sets there, and then do you allow that to affect your production? And then if you shoot virtually, how do you, I guess, how do you take that into account if you're if you're trying to produce Japan, but you're in LA, and how do you kind of go about trying to create a Japan that's a little bit more realistic? And I don't know, I'm really bad at asking questions, but that's kind of my question.
That's a great question.
Okay.
No, it's a really good question, because that's exactly the choice. I mean, I think almost on a production by production, but sometimes on a shot by shot basis, you're asking that question or those questions. So I would find, yes, you travel to a country, you are surrounded by people from that country, the creativity from that country, the ideas, the input, the inspiration, that's been magical so far and has created, the best experiences for me as a producer so far as well. There's nothing quite like it. You take it to, another country and you recreate it, and it's so much more rigid, and you've got so much less flexibility. And you've got and for example, with Japan, you can't suddenly magic up 100 extras who are Japanese, because in most cities you won't find those extras ready to come and join you on a film set. They'll be busy doing other jobs. So you come to a place, you have options, and you are able to make changes in real time and make things work. Gives you that flexibility. What I was excited by, and always am, is the imaginary line between actors and sets that we create in front of a virtual stage. So when reality and when virtual takes over from real, and where that line comes. And I was also interested in your the way that you, in one of your clips, the building of the set, the model of the temple, which where you need to actually build something physical and drop that into the virtual world. I thought was really interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, the mantra that going back and looking at reality and experiencing reality and referencing reality is still the foundation of everything, even the things that you do virtually. And if you've got actors who are going to be on a virtual set, you hope that the effort that's gone into recreating that and actually in giving them a chance to experience it, immerse themselves in it, there's some upfront to that gets everybody in the right mindset. You don't want to just be making it up from afar because you read it in a book or you saw a picture online or something like that. You want to introduce that firsthand experience of the thing you're trying to convey, the mood, the culture, the object. That's why the physicality of even building things still and then scanning them, even from a prop point of view, is still valuable. There's a texture and a reality to things that, and you want to touch things and know how that feels, so that when you do them digitally and you look at them, you know if it's right or not right. I think one of the biggest ironies, actually I found this at ILM for many years, that you started having a bunch of people that were considered camera artists and layout artists, and some of them had never looked through a camera lens. So how do they know what that's supposed to look like and feel, and that physical reality? Whereas, what we'll do now, we might do a virtual camera, but then we'll come back and hook it up to a real set of wheels and a dolly track and actually do manual operation of the virtual camera to get that human factor back in. But going back to that awareness of a real location and thing, anybody that's involved in that, from the actors to the DP to the director, need to have been to that place or understand that concept and that culture and that feel to be able to convey that and portray it believably. You can't just see it secondhand.
Fantastic. Sadly, I think we're out of time. We could talk about AI for hours or days or weeks, and we probably will. I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists and thank all of you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Borden, Mr. Nakajima, and Mr. Murphy, all of you. Please give them a big round of applause once again. Today, thank you very much for Tokyo International Film Festival MPA Seminar. On that note, we try to conclude the seminar. Thank you very much to you all once again. See you again next year.